Ahead on Ncba's Cattleman to Cattleman.
Members of the beef industry deal with tough issues every day. We'll talk with a group of producers about the challenges and the opportunities they face on their operations.
And now, Ncba's Cattleman to Cattleman with host Kevin Oxner.
Welcome to Ncba's Cattleman to Cattleman. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. Anyone that knows me knows how proud I am to be part of the beef industry, where great people work hard each day to produce a safe, wholesome, and delicious product. But as you hear regularly on our show, our business does have its challenges, and some of them can keep us awake at night as we think about how we're going to overcome those difficulties. Today, we're joined by a great group of cattle producers who will share some wisdom about some of those issues and how they plan to tackle them in their own operations. Let's meet the folks we have with us today. Nolan Stone comes to us from Colorado, just down the road. Nolan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Kevin, my wife and two children, and I live in Eaton, Colorado. I spent 18 years in the cattle feeding business working for JBS Five Rivers, and about a year ago I left there to start our own business, S Equal Cattle Company, where I'm a bonded order buyer, so I buy and sell feeder cattle, and then we also take care of we run about 450 cows of our own and some stocker cattle, so that's how I stay busy nowadays.
Very busy indeed. And Bruce Mershon comes to us from Missouri and Mershon Cattle Company. Bruce, tell us about yourself.
We live in Lee Summit, Missouri, but the home farm's in Buckner, Missouri, and we'll calve about 1,600 cows this year, scattered around about 12 different counties in west central Missouri. So our model is a little different, both on leased land, but we have cows on a daily fee basis, and then we retain ownership of our steers to the harvest and then sell some bred heifers also.
And Taryn Dreeling comes to us from western Nebraska, cow country. Tell us a little bit about your operation, Taryn.
So my husband and I live and work on a large ranch. It's about 300,000 acres with 13,000 cows. We manage about 800 head or so of those cows. And then we also own a small herd in partnership with my husband's folks.
Fantastic. And Jesse Larios comes to us from California and Foster Feed Yards. Tell us a little bit about you and your operation, Jesse.
I work at Foster Feed Yard, fourth generation family farm. We've been around since 1956. And when we say family farm at Foster's, we really mean family. I'm actually a second generation employee at Foster Feed Yard. My father worked at Foster Feed Yard for 43 years, alongside with three of my uncles. We're very proud to say that between my father and my three uncles, they worked together 163 years at Foster Feed Yard. And if you compare that to a Forbes 500 company, that's unheard of. This year, I'm in my 20th year at Foster Feed Yard. And unfortunately, this year, we have lost one of the primary owners. And I am stepping up and taking over that spot right now at Foster Feed Yard. We manage 2 feed yards with a capacity of 40,000 head, and we have fun every day producing great protein for the world.
We do have fun in our business, and I think take a lot of pride about what we do, but there are some challenges right now. And I guess I'd just like to get you all's perspective of what are some of the individual challenges you're facing in your operation. Nolan, what are some of the things you see on the horizon?
You know, I think as I reflect back on my cattle feeding career, one big challenge we have in our area is labor. Difficult time finding skilled, educated labor, and I don't see that challenge changing anytime soon. I think we're going to have to get more creative in training new people and being able to keep businesses moving forward.
Record low unemployment, we shouldn't expect anything but some continued challenges in that area, right?
Correct.
And Bruce, how about you?
I think after coming off record profits 2 and 3 years ago that we got a little lax on managing our cost, and you know, land values, more cows doesn't mean cash rents are going down anytime soon, so it's really important for us to probably get more out of each acre that we do and do a better job of managing to try to bring our cost per animal unit down.
Yeah, I hear a lot discussed about efficiency, and we'll come back and hit that a little bit later. Taryn?
Well, I'm passionate about consumer relations, and so I think we're still facing a challenge with meeting consumers where they are and showing them what we do on the day-to-day. So, I mean, ultimately, if we don't have a consumer, we can't do what we love to do. So
that's exactly right. Jesse, how about some of the challenges you all face in California?
We have I would say we have two different levels of challenges. On the top level that our industry is facing, cattle feeding, is volatility, severe volatility. When I went to school in college, we're talking a 10-year cycle. Then a 10-year cycle became a 7-year cycle. And then a 7-year cycle just reduced. And now it seems like in a matter of weeks or a matter of days or a matter of an hour, this cattle market can change. And it changes so dramatically that it causes severe financial damage, so risk management has to be a big part of it. The second part that is really affecting us is, I concur with Nolan, is our labor pool. We just can't find people. Yes, with livestock, it's much different. It's much of a technical approach. We can't seem to be finding the employee that could spot that sick calf just by that watery eye or that droopy ear. So now we're having to work with a different generation that is not quite as the greatest generation that we're losing, and we're having to retrain them and give them the proper tools to do the job right.
You know, I think, Bruce, you'd mentioned the word profitability, and we are a little different situation than we were a couple of years ago, but by and large, at least the top producers are still remaining profitable. I'm curious, what are the things you're doing in your own operation to improve your profitability?
First off, we've built a lot of electric fence and dividing up those pastures in smaller groups to better manage our forage. We've gone to where we've AIing 85% of our commercial cows every year. So a lot of hard work, but we really feel like we're improving our herd at a dramatic pace. And lastly, we just started up with the Hereford Association and their National Reference Sire Program to use seed stock from their young sires and track that data and share that with the Hereford. And so hopefully it's a win-win for both of us.
Nolan, what are you doing to try to improve the profitability in these times?
On our cow herd, we're trying to utilize more of the DNA technology on the bulls that we're selecting. I think it's important to be able to purchase bulls that have more accurate expected progeny differences, and the use of whether it's the 50K products or whatever the seed stock producers use, and just mining through that data and trying to find characteristics of the bulls that kind of fit our cow herd. We run on leased ground, and so our cow herd's very spread out, which is a challenge, but it also offers you an opportunity to probably more accurately mate those cows depending on what their qualities are in each different herd.
That's fantastic. And Jesse, what are you all doing at the feed yard level to improve the profitability of the operation?
I think right now what's key is information. Information to make decisions because of the volatility that I spoke about earlier. I mean, we need information at our fingertip, information on our cell phones. I mean, that's something that our forefathers didn't have the luxury of. So the most data that I could grab at different points at the feed yard at any given time is key. From tracking an animal individually to tracking its weight to tracking its performance. So that is very important. I always compared our operation to flying a rocket ship to the moon. And the more gauges I have on that dashboard, I know I'm going to hit that target. And whenever I don't have information, that's where I get nervous, especially in this volatile market today.
That's fair, and I think other protein segments, you know, the poultry segment, the swine segment, have probably been more sophisticated for longer in terms of the information they track and how they utilize that information to make decisions. You both mentioned technology, and I'm curious from you all's perspective how you're utilizing and harnessing technology to improve your operations. Nolan, what are you all doing?
I think the use of these long-acting hormone implants that are coming on the market is very important. I think from a feed yard standpoint, the fewer times you need to handle the cattle and remove them from their pen, I think the better the cattle will perform. So the use of diligent use of antibiotics, I think, is still a concern. As I go back to the labor situation, that's one thing that's really important, is training these new people on the responsible use of the antibiotics. It can get overlooked. I think as producers, we've all been through BQA handling, and we know what we're supposed to do, but these newer people we're bringing to the operations, we need to be very careful. So, but there's so many technologies out there. I mean, you walk through the booths here at Ncba, and you're overwhelmed with how fast things are progressing. And I think the more you can utilize and find things that fit your operation, the more profitable you're going to be. As Bruce said, we had some very fortunate times, and I think there's probably more challenging ones ahead of us, and we're going to have to decide which tools we need to use as individuals.
And which ones make money, right?
That's correct.
So Bruce, tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing from a genetic standpoint and other technologies that you've harnessed to try to improve your operation.
Yes, we've enrolled all of our commercial cows into the Simmental herd record-keeping book, total herd record-keeping book, and then to track those and create our own EPDs on our commercial cows. And along the same line, to get a better database or information, we were using GeneSeek came with a 50K test that they're only charging us $15 a head. So we took tissue samples on all of our cows and submitted all their cows to better create hopefully information 2 and 3 years down the road from our offspring. And then thirdly, we did a research project this year with the University of Missouri, Dr. Patterson, Jordan Thomason, and we did a sex semen trial along with new protocols in the timed AI field. So
you're trying to use sex semen to really create more specificity around the replacement females you're developing for your herd?
Exactly. Yeah. The idea that one day we'll have a maternal herd that will breed to heifer semen, and then a more terminal portion of our herd that'll be to bull semen, and hopefully we'll progress at a much faster pace.
That's an intriguing concept. Obviously, again, going back to the other protein, that's something that the hog industry has used for a long, long time. And now we have some technologies, to your point, that allow us to do some of those very same things and still maintain the management systems that, big pasture management and so forth that we do with the cow-calf industry. Jesse, what are you all doing from a technology standpoint?
We're here at Ncba, and I look at all this technology going through here, and I focus on addressing the consumer. I've gone through many cities: Cleveland, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, a couple cities in Hawaii, and I stand in front of meat counters and I listen to the consumers' questions. So whenever I go back to my operation, I always think about our consumers and say, how am I going to address this issue? So I use technologies from identification to identify every animal in my feed yard. So I do not group them together. What I do is identify each one, and I use data systems to measure efficiency per the animal, not per the group. Yeah. Like I always said, we don't want to feed all the animals, we just want to feed the right ones, and the right ones are the profitable ones. So identifying which ones are the correct ones and identifying at the right time. At the same time, I also use the whisper technology that is here at Ncba, and yes, we did learn a lot from using that technology and using our antibiotics more judiciously, from recognizing an animal that might be running a temperature due to a digestive issue, then having a lung score due to a respiratory issue, and giving more tools for my employees to do the information correct. And then also, using different syringes where I can give an antibiotic down to the cc to 100 instead of just giving one mass dose to all of them. So I'm doing more of a precise job, and I can answer that consumer's question the right way.
That's fantastic. And Taryn, what are you finding as it relates to technology that improves your businesses?
So one of the technologies that we've started using on the ranch is ultrasound technology to preg check all the cows on the operation. It just makes things go so much faster, less labor. It's just, we've really enjoyed it. We actually started with one ultrasound machine and got 2 so we could move even faster.
That's fantastic. Well, you all have spurred a number of additional questions in my mind, and so thank you for your insight. We're going to have a great discussion. When we come back, our panel will discuss the cattle markets and how they're working to manage market risk. And we'll examine consumer attitudes towards beef. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Public land issues are somewhat unique.
The Public Lands Council is valuable to the ranchers because it's someone out there that's speaking their language.
Somebody has to communicate with the agencies the BLM, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife.
Well, the Public Lands Council has provided incredible information and help, I think, to all members of the Congress.
Everything from water rights to endangered species to wildfire to the need to actively manage the lands through grazing.
And there's always a new battle coming up.
The people on the land know much better what's good for them, their land, and their community than anybody in Washington ever will or ever has.
So for them to have someone who is out there helping send their message and helping them keep their industry alive, that's super important for them.
There's no way you can really put a value on what they do for us. So having someone in Washington, D.C., a voice for the industry, a voice for public land ranching, such as PLC, Public Lands Council, is huge.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, as we talk with beef producers just like you and me from all across our country. You know, we mentioned cattle markets just a minute ago. Over the last 3 years, they tell us that we've seen a $40 per hundredweight swing in fat cattle. Where do you think these markets are headed this next year, Nolan?
That's a good question, Kevin. This market is so volatile, as Jesse mentioned earlier. I think we do have a lot of supply. There's a lot of cattle on feed. Placements have been higher than a year ago for many months in a row now. And so I think producers are going to have to be really careful about their marketing decisions. I think exports are helping. I think we're able to get rid of the supply that we have, but we have more challenging times coming up right in front of us.
Big mountain of meat coming, right?
Yep.
Jesse, what are your thoughts as you look ahead to 2018?
Well, Kevin, if I had the correct answer, I'd be a rich man today. But it's, you know, to be honest with you, just volatility, so many factors on there. You know, we got to keep our exports going strong. So from NAFTA to TPP, we need everybody. We have China open. We need to focus on getting that. You know, I always said if we could get every person in China eat a quarter pounder, that equals a lot of American beef that we could put in there. I do enjoy the tax break. The disposable income in the United States is going to be good. People are going to be able to buy more of our beef. But at the same time, I worry that the barrel oil is going up, so that might take some away from the disposable income. There's a lot of factors on the dairy herd in the United States. The price of milk doesn't come around. There might be a lot of cows coming to market. So the volatility is there, but at the same time, I always like to focus on the good part.
That's right.
You know, we had some of the best beef. We have the best beef in the world, and we have markets that love our beef, and we need to focus on those parts.
Yeah, I love that. You know, we talk about the risks that we manage. Market risk is only one of those. Taryn, what are you all doing from a production or weather risk standpoint in your operation?
So we have implemented a drought plan when we actually had to use it this past year, where we destocked the older cows, or the cow, you know, we cull a little harder, got rid of our steers right away rather than stockering them for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And Bruce, what are you doing from a risk management perspective?
We keep it pretty simple. Since we do retain ownership, when the steers go to the feed yard, depending on our market opinions, we'll try to hedge those up and alleviate some of that risk at that time. Although it's still difficult with the current way the fat cattle market gets traded, when do you lift the hedges? When do the cattle actually get traded? So it's frustrating, but we're committed to be a part of it.
Well, and Nolan, you spent a lot of time in this cattle feeding business. What are the lessons you take away over 18 years of feeding cattle in terms of how you manage market risk?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned in my career in the cattle market is not to get too greedy. I think I've seen it many times when markets are on the rise and people hit a spot where they can make a good profit, make the payments they need to, and continue to operate. And sometimes they'll wait too long. I think I've learned that when the margins are right, take advantage of it and then forget about it. The other thing is if you do sell cattle and the market continues to go up, there's not a lot you can do about it. So be happy with your marketing decisions, make the correct ones, and involve people. There's a lot of people who are willing to talk to you about your decision. I know a lot of producers feel like they don't understand enough about the markets as I'm buying and selling feeder cattle, and encourage them to pick up the phone and you know, call their local feed yard, call the auction market, whatever it might be, and talk about where prices are at, and or a broker, whoever you're comfortable with, talk to them and make good marketing decisions. You know, as a cow-calf producer, you might make only 1 or 2 decisions a year, and don't be afraid to get some input and some advice. And
my grandpa always said nobody ever went broke making a profit, and I think there is something to be said about that.
Get Nolan to text that to me every morning when I get out of bed?
I like that. That's right. The word for the day from Nolan Stone. Jesse, any other thoughts about the lessons you've learned?
You know, every time I think we're having a tough market, I think about our forefathers, and that they had it tough. So, you know, working closer, we're all in it together. And not looking sideways, looking vertically. I tend to work more with the suppliers more and working with the packer more. So when we look at risk management, we do something. We work closer with the packer and we forward contract these cattle. So a lot of times the cattle aren't even to me yet, and they're already pre-sold. Just like Nolan mentioned, you know, we're all in it together. So working with packer closely and lowering the risk on it, and just moving on to the next one. You know, there's good margins in these cattle. Are they the greatest? They might not be the greatest. But, you know, we get to play another day, and we get to move on and go on to another cycle. And be honest with you, when you compare our margins to what they were 10 years ago,
pretty good.
We're pretty good.
Yeah, it's still a pretty good time being in the beef business. You know, a couple of you mentioned a key component, and that's the export markets. I mean, we're going to have, I believe, the second largest export year on record last year. It has consumed about 40% the increase of supply of our beef over the last year. What is your perspective in terms of the role that export markets play, Bruce?
Obviously, it's critical. If we didn't have it, I'm sure I'd be a lot smaller cattle producer today. Wouldn't need as many cows, and you know, but I'm hopeful. You know, we've taken our product to where it's 80% choice now, and why can't we be 95% choice and 35% prime and more efficient to capture more of that export market and lead the world in the quality beef?
Jesse, you all are involved in some export business?
Yes, live also. 3 or 4 months ago, we were even shipping live cattle to Mexico. So that was a great market for us too. And today, as we're speaking right now, my men back home are shipping some cattle that are going to be destined for China. So they're key. They're key. We right now, with the supply we have on hand, we do need all these export markets to keep our industry so dynamic and moving forward.
Nolan, what's the biggest misconception people have about the export business in beef, or what's one thing you'd like producers to know about the export business?
I think the misconception that some producers, I won't say most, probably have is that we're exporting entire carcasses. And you know, I think the packing plants, the distributors have done a great job of mining those animals, those carcasses, and finding the highest value market for each cut of meat. You know, even the offal and the trim, and the world we live in now, where you can ship meat easily, you can have access to these markets and find out what they're willing to pay for every different cut, whether it be the tongue and the tripe, and treating the carcass like the asset it is, and being able to take each piece and find the highest market for it is really important to us.
It's amazing what happens when we can add $4 a carcass here and $5 a carcass here, particularly with products that would just absolutely be wasted products here in the United States. Fantastic insights, folks. Now don't go away. We'll have more insights from our panel of producers, including their thoughts on issues out of Washington, D.C. right after this.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Grazon Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
No matter what job I've got to do, my John Deere 5E tractor will do it all. Whether I'm cutting, moving feed, or building a fence. Using my 5E means my work gets done faster at a price I can afford, and that works for me.
Welcome back. We have a group of beef producers here with me sharing their insights, concerns, and ideas about the challenges and opportunities in today's beef industry. Let's talk about Washington, D.C. for just a minute. What are some of the key issues, Nolan, that you see impacting us out of Washington, D.C.?
The main issue I'm focused on right now, Kevin, would be the electronic logging devices. It's something that's going to cost the cattle producers kind of on the edges of the United States, whether it be California or the Southeast, quite a little money. I think we need to have some really serious discussions, safety being the key. We obviously want to keep the roads safe, but I think there's probably some areas in between where we were and where we're going that would probably allow us to keep the roads safer and be able to get cattle moved across the country in an efficient manner. You know, I don't know what the cost increase is going to be, but I'm going to guess to say cattle may be coming out of California to Colorado, which is very important to that Greeley, Colorado area for the cattle feeding. You might be adding $4 or5 a hundredweight. That money is going to come straight off of the bid for the cattle to come this way. So I think producers need to recognize this and get involved, and we need to try to find a better solution than what's on the table right now.
Critical issue. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
We addressed it earlier, Nolan and I, with our labor pool. We cannot find enough employees right now to work in our industry. In our industry, it's largely Hispanic, largely from Mexico. I think we need to sit down and address the immigration issue. And I know that's a very tough issue to talk to. I personally have a story because my father came across on the Bracero program, and I immigrated to the U.S. I was born in Mexico, and I've been in the U.S. since I was 2 months old. My employees, 98% of them are from Mexico. So, where am I going to find the next generation? Yes, there is unemployment, I know, in the United States, but we go to the unemployment office and we can't find someone with the experience to spot a sick animal, with the experience to know how to safely move livestock down a drover's alley. So we do need to address that issue because it is our food supply, and we need to find our labor pool.
And not just at the feed yard issue, but the packing issue as well, right? I mean, it goes up and down throughout the entire industry. Bruce, what are the kinds of issues that are impacting your business?
Yeah, I'd like to actually talk about a positive come out of Washington with the reduction in the taxes. On our flight out, we got an email from our payroll accountant and showing us how many dollars the increase in take-home pay our employees are getting from the reduction in taxes. And so now there's some flaws in that tax the way it was written, and we got to get some of that cleaned up. But I like, for a change, it's nice to have a positive out of Washington.
Yes, it is. And another one of the positives is what we've seen from a regulatory standpoint. I know, particularly from a feed yard perspective, you can get overly burdened with regulations. Jesse, you come from California. Tell us about that.
Yes, regulations, I understand the intent, and they all have well intent. But in a feed yard, decisions need to be made now. And whenever we write a regulation which requires another document, you get bogged down in documents. And all day long, we are just about doing paperwork after paperwork after paperwork. We have dust, I get fined. We have too much water in the pens, I get fined. So there has to be a happy medium, I understand that. But whenever we practically have to hire someone just to do the paperwork, to keep it with regulation, that is not what the intent was. And like I said, sometimes in the feed yard industry, for the well-being of the livestock, we need to do something. And we'll go ask for a permit to build something, and there's such a long wait. And sometimes in livestock, that's against the animals. We cannot wait. So we do need a little relief on regulations.
So Nolan, what can producers do to make certain that our industry isn't regulated out of business?
I think the key thing they can do is get involved in their local state cattle associations. I'm currently president of the Colorado Livestock Association, and we have a great team of people, from our board members to our staff, that are engaged at the state level. We've been able to have a great relationship with the regulators and our state lawmakers, and just for them to know who you are and be able to pick up the phone and talk to them about an issue is important, and it carries a lot of weight. They really do want to hear from you, and your state cattle associations is a great way to get involved in that.
Absolutely, state and national. Bruce, anything else?
Just same thing. We're active in the Missouri Cattlemen's Association. It's important, and we're at the Capitol every Wednesday throughout the session. And not only then, you know, when the state tax evaluations were being made last fall, we were there every day trying to make sure that the valuations didn't go up on our land. So it's important to hold down those costs, and being involved and being active help administrate that.
Great advice. Jesse?
I'd like to add, I agree with Nolan, being involved. You know, in March I'm going to Sacramento, and in September I'm going to DC at the request of our representatives. And it's very common. When I first got involved, everybody just recognized the hat coming down the hall. And now to the point where I get a phone call on my cell phone from people in DC saying, tell me more about this. And tell me the pros and tell me the cons. So whenever you can touch someone that is making the laws in that level, and that all started just by walking them halls.
That makes big, big impacts, and I thank all of you that have invested so much of your time in representing all of our industry. You're doing a great work. Still ahead, we'll have more on the issues facing all beef producers, including consumer pressures. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Don't miss the 2018 Ncba Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional leaders and federal agency influencers to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C. April 10th to the 12th for the 2018 Ncba Legislative Conference. Details at ncba.org.
Welcome back. Today we've got a great group of experts sharing their thoughts on some of the important issues facing the beef industry. So far we've touched on topics like the cattle markets and government regulation, but now I want to turn our attention to the consumer side of the equation. Clearly we've got a mountain of meat coming at consumers over the next couple of years, beef, pork, and poultry, and we've got to focus on demand. Now it strikes me that increasingly consumers want to know not only where, but how their beef is being produced. And Taryn, what are your thoughts about how we can address that issue and interest on behalf of consumers?
Yeah, so we can meet our consumers where they are, in the grocery store, at church, in public, anywhere. But something else that I've done is I've gotten active on social media, and I started a blog which people can come to find recipes or tips and tricks or ranch life stories or anything like that. But really it's something that we can all do, just visiting and listening when we're flying home, listen to the conversations in the airports. But yeah, the blog, I've gotten quite a little traffic from that, and I actually ask my readers in a survey, what do you want to know? And I get lots of questions. Like one of them was, where can I buy beef without hormones? You can't.
That's going to be challenging.
But then I went and discussed
naturally.
it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. And you know, that's the beautiful thing about today and the internet. You can do that from the middle of the sandhills of Nebraska. You do not have to be in the city center to do the kinds of things you're doing representing the beef industry and really connecting with a set of consumers that you may never meet face to face, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right.
So how are consumer concerns impacting your production practices? Bruce, what does it mean to you at a cow-calf level?
Well, we try to follow all the beef quality assurance protocols. One of these days we're probably going to have to address traceback as an industry, but we want to follow all the proper protocols, make sure that we're confident that we're providing a wholesome product and making sure that we're doing the least amount that's necessary, but also to keep the cattle healthy.
Yep. And you talk about cattle health, antibiotics are under fire, and certainly, you know, we as producers, I tell folks all the time, we want to be able to utilize antibiotics to treat cattle long term. We want them to be effective. Jesse, what changes have you made in your operation to improve the judicious use of antibiotics?
Yes, I listen to consumers, and I also am a father. I also enjoy beef, and I put on the same plate the same beef that I produce my consumers. So the same concerns the American family has, I also have for my own family. What have I done, from putting the scale on the chute and giving proper dose down to the pounds? And I always tell my consumers, Do you do that for your kids when you give 1 tablespoon to every, or do you weigh your son or daughter when you give an antibiotic? Down to identifying every animal to the ID. So, you know, just different technologies to do the better job and trace it and do a total trace back to every animal.
Taryn, have you seen changes in your own operation based on the feedback or concerns you're hearing directly from consumers?
Well, what I try to do is, rather than change what we're doing a whole lot, I listen to their concerns and then I try to explain and show them what we're doing so they understand, because sometimes it's just a matter of a misunderstanding, where they've seen, like you said, the internet's a great thing, but it's also a very dangerous thing because you can find lots of misinformation. So I think where we can really help consumers is helping them understand what we're doing, rather than just, I mean, we need to meet their demand, but there's a certain point where we have to say, this is what we're doing and this is what's best for the animal and ultimately best for the beef that we're putting on your plate. So, you know, just helping them understand is major.
So fundamentally, I guess I'd ask you, are we producing the kind of beef that consumers want? Nolan, what do you think?
I think definitely. I think we continue to be more transparent with our businesses, and technology allows us to be more engaged with our consumers. And I think there's plenty of options out there, whether you want grass-fed or natural or traditional beef. You know, I could go on for a long time debating why I think one's better than the other, but I think we need to listen to the consumers. We need to respond to their requests, and we can adapt quickly. Our business, our people are more educated, we have more technology, and we can move towards the consumers if we know what they want. And I think we need to continue to accept that. Not everybody wants the same thing, and if they're willing to pay a little more, or they want it to taste differently, then we will do our best to produce it. And it's always going to be safe and wholesome and affordable. But we're just kind of branching off into new markets, and I imagine they will continue to evolve.
Bruce, any thoughts?
Our goal is to continue to not only produce a better product, but a more efficient product also. So we as an industry, I think, to remain competitive, to provide that good quality product, but we need to look at our feed efficiencies and doing a better job every day, and we'll be rewarded for it.
And continue, as Taryn mentioned, to tell our story. That's fantastic what you're doing. We'll have more insights from our panel of producers, including their thoughts on why it's important to get involved and engage. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, as we get insights from cattle producers just like you and me. And you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about some of the issues and challenges we faced. One thing we've not talked much about is how do we engage young talent in this business? And you know, it's tough. It's a capital intensive business. It's a risky business, as we already discussed. So I'd be curious to know, what advice do you have for young people who want to get engaged in this business? Bruce?
You know, we have a little different model. Our cow-calf herds, lots of them are out on a daily fee basis, and a couple of those are young producers that have leased the land or own some portion of the land, and then they run our cows and provide the daily care and the forage for it, and we provide the cows and the inputs for them. So it's a win-win for both of us, and allows us to own more cows and allows them to be in the industry.
That's fantastic. Taryn, how have you found the best way is to get engaged in this industry?
So, well, I grew up on a feedlot. I mean, Jesse was saying earlier that his feed yard is a family farm, and I say if it's a farm, it's a family farm, because that's the only way I've ever known, because the feed yard I grew up on was not owned by my family, but all my family was there. And I moved to a corporate feed yard, but it was like we were a family. And then my husband had the opportunity to move to the ranch where we are now, and we have our family there. And if young producers want to get started like we did, like working in feed yards on different ranches, and then build into something like what Bruce does with his lease land and putting cattle on there and giving the young producers a chance to get started, that's an excellent way to go. And then since then, we've also been able to buy a few head of our own cows, because it is really tough. You can't afford to buy the land and the cattle at the same time, so we're going to buy the cattle first, which we run in partnership with my in-laws. But yeah, just if you can find somebody like Bruce that wants to help you out, or like the ranch that we work for, that we're able to bring our family in and get started and manage the day-to-day, I say that's the way to go.
Nolan, you were managing a feed yard while you're building your cow herd, is that right? What thoughts do you have for young people?
Yeah, I was listening to them, and it's quite interesting as I look back on how my business has progressed. And when I got out of college, I had pretty much nothing but some debt to pay back. And so this business is one that if you have good values and you're willing to work hard and do your job and create value for someone else, they'll pay you back. And so I was fortunate to work for a company who encouraged me to have an entrepreneurial spirit and start my own cow herd while continuing to manage the feedlot. And I think most companies in the cattle business are like that. They want to bring people in who will want to be a part of something, but understand that all of our dreams seems to be having our own cow herd, and it's a great business to work in because of that. You're dealing with real people who care about you as much as they care about themselves, and are willing to invest in you and encourage you to grow. So I would like to. I think people don't recognize that. They feel like, well, you have to have money to get in the cattle business. Well, you do eventually, but you can make money and work for somebody else and still be a part of it.
And there's such a need for people that have a skill set and a passion for this business that if you find the right partners, Bruce, you're a great example, create some opportunities. Jesse, what would you add?
I think there's a prejudice out there in some areas that you have to be born into it, or your family needs to own a piece of it. And I'm a perfect example. My father worked at the feed yard for 43 years, and I worked at the feed yard, worked my way through it, and actually the owner of the feed yard actually paid for my college to go. And when I came back, I started up again. But it just, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I always say that I'm fortunate enough that I don't work a day in my life because I do what I love. So if you have a passion for it, follow it. That's what it's all about. So if you want to work in the cattle industry, work in the cattle industry. There's a lot of management jobs at the feed yards. Nolan is a perfect example of that. And opportunities happen. Working through the feed yard, the owner of the feedlot one time just gave me the opportunity. You and I are going to partner in on 18 head. And I said, why do I want to partner in 18 head? He says, you're going to see it from a different side. And that 18 head, we rolled it up, and now it's a much larger number, but it started somewhere, and it started with an opportunity. But like I said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. But that's what I like to tell that young producers. If you want it, go for it. It'll happen.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you guys for that perspective. Now don't go away. We'll be back with our good friend Baxter Black right after this.
Don't miss your chance to read the National Cattleman. It's the official publication of Ncba, and it's packed with timely news and information about the issues and events that affect your cattle business. Plus, the National Cattleman includes producer education, cattle market insights, and more. A subscription is free when you become a member of Ncba. Join now by calling 866-233-3872 or on the web at ncba.org.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at Prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
When a new calf hits the ground, his clock starts ticking. A belly full of colostrum gives him his best odds, but if he doesn't get any, his time starts running out. That's when you grab a bag of Oxford Ag Colostrum in their patented feeding system. Fill them with warm water, shake it to mix, feed it with a tube or nipple, and you are done. No bucket, no bottle, no mess, and right on time. Get yours at oxfordag.com. Costs less than a dead calf.
No telling how many good dogs he outlived. No matter how good your dog was, he'd once had a collie, a heeler or gyp that did everything your dog does and more. The same for horses and pickup trucks, though the one he drove was a wreck. Best I could tell, he didn't have nothing. But I never seen that affect his opinion on anything you might have owned, from a purebred bull to a bit. By the time he'd finished pontificating, you'd wind up sucking hind tit. Last night, I was bragging on one of my dogs I'd sold at the top of the year to a herder who worked on Wasabi's ranch. They said my dog had no peer. It was 7 miles of circuitous road from the lower field to the lane. They'd send my good collie to bring the sheep home, and never had called a complaint. He'd start him out where the new highway sign warned, "Caution, livestock crossing ahead." Then herd him north to the Conoco billboard. Go right till a homemade sign read, "Palumbo's Tomatoes and Vegetable Stand," where he'd turn towards the four-way stop. Platteville read east, so he'd go till he spotted Dick's Welding and Sheet Metal Shop, take a left on Bromley, then up past the barn that advertised hay by the bale. Till at last, he turned up the Willer Creek Road by the sign that said, "Rabbits for sale." At the third mailbox, saying, "Wasabi sheep," he'd fetch 'em just like he'd been shown and drive that big bunch of scatterbrained woolies up the lane. Just him, all alone. "Top that," I thought, "you cranky old coot." He said, "Well, that's mighty impressive indeed, though I'm not surprised, 'cause my dog spent last year teaching all them sheep how to read." This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. We sure appreciate our segments with you each week. And we'll be back with some final thoughts from our panel right after this.
Don't miss the 2018 NCBA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional leaders and federal agency influencers to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C. April 10th to the 12th for the 2018 NCBA Legislative Conference. Details at ncba.org.
Welcome back. As we wrap up our program, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to share some final thoughts on their message for cattle producers. Nolan, what would you tell your fellow producers as we look ahead to 2018 in terms of a challenge or an overarching message you have for them in the year ahead?
You know, I'd like to reiterate the importance of getting involved in your state cattle association as well as the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. It's really struck me how much impact somebody can have, especially when you work in conjunction with a bigger group who all have the same message. I think not sure what the challenges will be in 2018, but I'm sure there'll be some, and involvement is key.
We're stronger together, aren't we? Bruce?
I would echo his comments along that same line, but I think we have a goal of every day being a little better. And hopefully, if we as an industry look at it, can we produce better beef every day on every individual farm and ranch, we'll be stronger going forward and have more export markets to build on.
It's a great challenge.
Thanks for having us, though, Ken.
Yes.
Appreciate the NCBA for the invite here today.
Absolutely. Karen?
Well, building off what Nolan and Bruce said, be involved, and you have the power to influence the beef demand every day by talking and having conversations with consumers, the ones that might be on the fence about you know, whether to purchase the chicken or the beef. If you're at the grocery store and you see them there, just say, hey, do you know this? Did you know beef has 10 essential vitamins and nutrients and a 3-ounce serving? You know, just something simple like that. But involvement in NCBA and your local and state, and involvement with the consumer, because like I said before, if we don't have a consumer, we can't do what we love.
Absolutely critical. Jesse.
With so much going on in our industry, something I hold deep in my heart is hunger, fighting world hunger. You know, we have the greatest nation on earth here in America. We're following the American dream, we really are. But currently in the United States, 1 in 5 children experience hunger on a daily basis. And what we're doing is we're taking different inputs and growing the best protein in the world. And hunger is close to my heart, that what we're trying to do is provide more protein, more food, so kids don't experience this hunger. You know, I know we get wrapped up in everything we're doing, but we got to do what's right. And today's day and time, it's just morally wrong to have someone, especially a child, experience hunger.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking some time to join us today and share not only your insights, but you're all just real inspirations for all of us in terms of what can be accomplished in the beef industry. So thank you all for everything you do on a daily basis, not only in your own operations, but for the industry. And don't forget, every day the NCBA staff in Washington, D.C. and Denver work to protect your interests. Join in the fight to protect our way of life by becoming an NCBA member. Just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit our website, that's ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. Thanks again to our panel, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week, right here on RFD TV.